Hi people. In this video I'm going to be talking about three prominent athletes, but particularly the first two, um, Hulk Hogan, Muhammad Ali and Alexander Usyk. Now on the surface you might think they're very loose connections. Hulk Hogan of course was a prominent wrestler who's just passed away, Muhammad Ali a prominent heavyweight boxer, and Alexander Usyk the current world heavyweight champion in boxing. Um, So Hogan's just died, and I made a video with a very sort of broadly looking at my thoughts on that. He was a bit before my time. I sort of got into wrestling in the Attitude Era in the late 90s, early 2000s. Hogan was more the 80s and sort of up to the mid 90s, I would say. Although he retired, I believe, in the early 2000s. But what I want to draw on in this video is a little bit more controversial. You know, when someone dies, there's always a sort of hesitancy to criticize them. But I've always believed prominent figures should be subject to an honest biographical analysis without being, overly crude about it. I think that public figures always have good and bad, so I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about both that good and bad when they pass away. I think it's reasonable. Um, Firstly, regarding both Hogan and Ali, there is absolutely no denying that they were both massive figures in their respective sports. Hulk Hogan's probably the most famous wrestler ever, and Muhammad Ali is probably the most famous boxer ever. There's just no question about that. And I don't think that's a controversial statement. Muhammad Ali was one of the most famous people of the 1970s, um, and Hulk Hogan was one of the most famous people of the 1980s. They were both cultural icons. They were both arguably transcended the sport. I would say Ali more so, but yeah, if you ask a non-wrestling fan to name a wrestler, chances are they'd name Hogan. But the truth is, both had controversies, and I feel there's some double standards because when it comes to Hogan, those controversies are being brought up quite widely. There's a lot of eulogies to him, but there's also the controversies being brought up, most notably the infamous audio where he came out with some racist comments in 2015. I've just heard that, and it was unpleasant, and it was clearly racist. He used the N word several times. It was in reference to his daughter, I believe. He personally addressed it several times, well, numerous times. He publicly apologized. But I think America, honestly, with the sensitivity around race, there's just no going back for a white celebrity when they make a racist comment. There's pretty much no going back. And honestly, this might be a controversial thing to say, but I think that's a little bit unfortunate. I don't really agree with condemning someone for eternity because they made a mistake. I think it should be acknowledged. I think it should be condemned, but I heard what Hogan said, and it was racist. It was unpleasant, and it was right that he apologized. Now some might argue he only apologized because he was exposed, but this is where I notice a double standard. Muhammad Ali was absolutely racist. Now, in the world of boxing, Muhammad Ali's controversies routinely get dismissed and ignored. Yet when he was champion, he was a polarizing figure. There's absolutely no question about it. I think what kind of happened is because he suffered from Parkinson's, people felt guilty about criticizing him. I honestly think there was a kind of, I think people sympathized with him because it was sad to see a guy who'd been so athletically outstanding have that sort of physical decline. It was genuinely sad to see. At the Atlanta Olympics when he brought the torch, he was physically the signs of Parkinson's were obvious. Um, I think there are some comparisons between Ali and Hope, and I'll get back to why I think it's double standard. There's double standards involved, but both are charismatic, particularly Ali. I mean, Ali could be genuinely entertaining. He was funny, he was witty, um, he was a great talker. So was Hogan. Although the world of wrestling kind of lends itself more than the world of boxing does. The world of boxing is more arguably more serious. Although wrestling carries absolutely risks, they are fundamentally different sports. I believe Hogan himself said if it was real fighting, he would have never have got involved in it. Whereas boxing is, this isn't to say wrestling doesn't carry risks, of course it does, but obviously I think wrestling fans would acknowledge it's different. The risks in wrestling are from the physical stunts involved, the physicality involved, but it isn't real fighting most of the time. Boxing is real fighting. Um, but this is where I think there's double standards. I've said at the start of the video, I think Muhammad Ali was a racist. Well, my backing for that is the fact that in his adult life, he was for years a member of the Nation of Islam. Now, this wasn't like he was a foolish young guy of 21 and he just dabbled in it. I'm talking about Muhammad Ali when he was well into his 30s. Okay, the Nation of Islam was basically a black supremacist fringe group who had some nutty ideas, and the vast majority of African Americans had nothing to do with the Nation of Islam. That's the reality. Muhammad Ali got, I think, to some extent brainwashed by Elijah Muhammad, and he got really into that. Um, he kind of distanced himself from his friend Malcolm X when X turned against Elijah Muhammad. So I think that Muhammad Ali's association with the Nation of Islam deserves a lot more scrutiny. Like I say, it wasn't some youthful dalliance. This was something he was a member of for years. Muhammad Ali was always race baiting, always. He was constantly talking about your people and my people. That's just fundamentally divisive. I find it incredible he's held up as a civil rights leader because he was a segregationist. Muhammad Ali was a segregationist. There's just no question about it. He favored the division of the races. He publicly attacked mixed couples. You know, at a time when they were facing real discrimination, one of the most famous people in the world was publicly attacking them. No doubt made their situation more difficult. I think his treatment of Joe Frazier was a disgrace. When Ali was had his title stripped because he refused to be drafted, Frazier, actually tried to lobby the boxing authorities to get Ali reinstated, and eventually that happened with the fight of the century in 1971. So you'd think Ali would be grateful. No, his attitude was to call Frazier an uncle TOM. That's about the worst thing a black man can say to another black man. He insinuated that Frazier was a stooge of the white establishment. This is incredible because Frazier actually came from a far more humble background than Ali. Ali was a relatively middle class background in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm not saying he was privileged. Every black American suffered institutional racism at the time, but Ali came from a better background than a lot of black fighters of his time. That's just the reality. He harassed Sonny Liston outside his own house. I mean, any boxer doing that today would be absolutely condemned. So I don't really know why Ali gets away with it. He encouraged 60,000 Congolese in Kinshasa to chant Ali Bumbaye, Ali kill him, in his fight with Foreman. Foreman, being a born again Christian, was very, very forgiving and always very complimentary to Ali. But I mean, Ali was a master at trash talking, and you could argue a lot of it was just hype. He didn't really mean it, and he sold fights. But someone like Tyson Fury gets condemned for it. But what Tyson Fury does is really no different than what Muhammad Ali done. I don't like it. I don't think fighters should be that disrespectful. I think sometimes, there's a difference between hyping a fight and crossing a line. I honestly believe Ali crossed the line sometimes. So honestly, I've mixed feelings about Muhammad Ali. I don't deny his greatness as a boxer. I think I rank him about second among heavyweights after Joe Louis. And I will make a strong argument against him being the greatest. I mean, he was an exceptionally talented athlete. He had speed, he had ring IQ, he knew how to outsmart his opponents. He was an exceptional athlete. I don't think anyone could deny that. And it is true later in life he was a great humanitarian. He did do work in that regard. And he was charismatic, no question about it. But I do not understand why Muhammad Ali's blatant racism gets excused and ignored. Um, you know, now how does this correlate with Hogan? Well, Hogan came out with his racist comments privately, and that gets exposed and condemned, even though he apologized. Ali never apologized for his racism. He just doubled down on it, defended it. So it's interesting, there's double standards there. You have a prominent black celebrity who was racist and a prominent white celebrity who was racist. But only the white celebrity gets really condemned for it. Why? Why? I mean, there's obvious double standards there. Now, I mentioned Alexander Usyk, and again, I'm going to attach this to Ali. They were actually born on the same day, and they're very similar kind of statistics. They're about the same size and weight. Heavyweights in the past were actually more like light heavyweights today. Today we're in the era of super heavyweights, get big men like Joshua and Fury. So Usyk actually isn't a small man. He would be similar to Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier in the past. Um, but although there's similarities between Usyk and Ali, um, they share the same birthday. Usyk's humble, whereas Ali trash talked. Usyk has been on the front line in the war in his country, whereas Ali avoided the draft. Now, I will say I won't condemn Ali too strongly for that, because the Americans committed war crimes in Vietnam, and Ali, I think, had a genuine moral conviction against that. So I'm not going to condemn him too strongly for that. But in typical Ali style, he race baited on that. He said, "Why should the black man go to Asia to kill?" This is his words, "the yellow man for the white man." Even though there were plenty of white Marines being killed as well, it just I have no respect for that sort of race baiting. It's really, I think, it's very, very toxic. Now, Ali's apologists say, hold up, hold up. He was in the era where black men were facing very real discrimination. It was the civil rights era. Yeah, I acknowledge that, and I don't begrudge Ali having frustration. But my point would be there were other prominent black fighters. Liston, Frazier, Foreman, Patterson, you know, they would have felt that frustration as well. But they did not race bait the way Ali did. They just didn't. In fact, George Foreman got condemned for waving the American flag when he won his Olympic medal. Ali claimed that he lost his Olympic medal. Actually, sorry, he claimed that he threw it away in frustration at being refused admission to a facility in the south, in the segregated south. There's no real evidence that happened. Chances are he just lost it. What I find incredible is he talks about Cassius Clay being his slave name. Well, who gave him that name? His black parents. And who's Cassius Clay? A famous abolitionist. I believe in the Lincoln administration, or at least in that era. An abolitionist. So that's interesting to label that a slave name. And it was given to him by his black parents. I think it's just an indication of Elijah Muhammad's brainwashing of Muhammad Ali. So, in conclusion, I'm not trashing Ali's legacy. I think he was a great boxer, a great athlete, a charismatic figure. And yeah, he did show compassion, especially there in life. He'd done a lot of humanitarian things, he'd done a lot of charity. And, Ali was pretty much clean living. He didn't do drugs. He was a bit of a womanizer, but, no one's perfect. My big issue with Muhammad Ali, and particularly the boxing world, is this pathetic notion that he's above reproach. In the boxing world, if you criticize Ali, it's almost like blasphemy. I don't believe that any public figure should be above criticism. And I'm just drawing attention to the fact that Hulk Hogan was the most famous wrestler, Muhammad Ali was the most famous boxer, yet Hogan gets condemned for his racism. Ali, gets excused, ignored. Double standards, absolutely. Now, there's things about Hogan I didn't like. He endorsed Donald Trump. He was a big MAGA guy. I think anyone who supported MAGA after what happened in 2021 is delusional. But Hogan's not the only wrestler who supported MAGA. Quite a few wrestlers have come out and said they're Republican, and it's their right. It's American citizens, but Hogan's not the only one. But he was a big MAGA supporter. When he got booed, though, I don't think it was just about that, and I don't think it was about the racist comments. I think in the case of Hulk Hogan, within the industry, he has controversies. He had a reputation for treating other wrestlers badly, for refusing to put over young guys. Um, he also was against the unionizing efforts that were within the industry, i.e., wrestlers trying to unionize and get more rights from the shackles that Vince McMahon had. So there is controversies with Hulk Hogan outside of the aforementioned racist statements he made. Um, I don't believe that someone should be condemned forever for making a racist statement that they regret and apologize for. The irony is Muhammad Ali never apologized for his, which were very public. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. Muhammad Ali, Hulk Hogan, two huge, huge figures. Both, I think, deserve all the acclaim they get for the influence that they had in their respective sports. But both displayed racism, yet Hogan's racism gets exposed and condemned. Ali's racism gets excused and ignored. Why is that? I'm just putting the question out there. I hope one day the boxing world is a little bit more honest about Ali and just say, just acknowledges, yes, he was a great athlete. Yes, he was a great heavyweight, but he was a polarizing figure. And as far as I'm concerned, he never really expressed real remorse for that. He moderated a little bit in later life, and I don't think Ali actually hated white people, but he race baited. Without question, he race baited. So, why does he get excused and Hogan gets condemned? It's worth a little bit of reflection, I think.